Hello, Mayor, members of the council. For the record, I'm Jason Wetstein, Communications Manager for the city, and tonight is the third time you'll be hearing from DHM Research. We had an introduction to the survey early on, right? The methods, and then we had a meeting about the statistical survey and the highlights there. The statistical survey, meaning any person in the city could be as equally possibly chosen to participate as any other. And then we had the community engagement portion of the survey, which is the one that we used outreach to try to gather perspectives, and we kept those two populations separate. And Kara is here to provide sort of the wrap-up presentation on the 2025 survey effort of both surveys, highlights. In your packet, you'll find the surveys, as the report as well, a very long report. So she's not going to be able to cover all of that, but she's going to be able to provide highlights. And I don't want to steal any of Kara's thunder here, but I do want to say that DHM Research has been incredible to work with. They listened, they tried to make it for Tumwater, they made it something that took in our needs and also brought expertise from working with around the state, around the nation, and just I learned a lot from it. And I want to say that I've been returning to these survey results again and again in my daily over the past few weeks that I've had the final results. And a little aside, last week I went to the Thurston County Resource Hub and started handing out things for utility assistance and to get people involved in planning and just a little bit about what's happening in Tumwater. And this is good karma, right? This is something that's good to do, but there are hundreds of good things to do on any given day. And having the research, having that survey, I could look and see that that was legitimized, legitimized or at least substantiated in the survey, that action. Now, not every action I take over the next year is going to be substantiated by the survey, but it sure does help when you're trying to prioritize. And I think we have an opportunity to use this tool amongst many others in planning and legislating and policymaking. And so with that, I want to start by or finish by saying that, you know, when we started this whole process, the sort of working hypothesis was that if we know our community better and know their perspectives and their values better, we're more likely to be on track with them. And so I'm hoping this is starting to build that track. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kara with DHM. So.
Hello, Mayor Sullivan, members of the council. Thank you for having me here today. For the record, my name's Kara Kernachik. As Jason said, I'm a research manager at DHM Research, and I'm here to talk through the final results of this survey. And not only should you guys receive the full report of the survey, upon request, you can also get the crosstabs. So if you have very specific demographic questions, you will have access to that information. I do not have it up here with me, and we do not have the time in the world to do all of that today. So I just want you to know that you do have access to that. And if you have any other questions, I can also look into it and send you an email afterwards. Okay. Am I doing this right? Okay, there we go. All right, so Jason gave a great overview of this, but just to reiterate, the reason that we did this research was twofold. The first was to assess satisfaction with city services and also to better understand what the community wants the city to prioritize in hopes of helping to inform the city's strategic plan. And then also if to establish a baseline for both of these things, if the city wants to continue doing this type of research going forward. As Jason said wonderfully, we did 2 surveys, so I'm not going to go too much into the methodology, but for the statistically valid survey, again, this is a random sample of City of Tumwater residents. And so we set quotas by age, gender, race and ethnicity, education level, and income to ensure that this is a representative sample of Tumwater residents. And to note that we have a margin of error of plus or minus 5.7% here. And then for our second survey, we did the community engagement portion. And so this survey was promoted and distributed by Jason and Lisa and their team to make sure that this got out into the public and people could choose to participate in this. We were able to get 273 respondents to this survey, so slightly less than the statistically valid survey, which was N of 300. Um, and just to say again, the results of this survey do not represent the general public of Tumwater. It is specifically most likely the group of people who you are probably hearing from the most, who are most likely to be giving feedback to the city council or engaging with the city, as this was something they saw out in the world and decided to opt into on their own. And the reason that we did this second survey was to see if there are any differences in the priorities and satisfaction levels among the group you're hearing from the most versus the City of Tumwater residents at large. So that's why we have the two different surveys, and you'll see that come up throughout the presentation. Okay, this is just a demographic breakdown of City of Tumwater residents, reflective of the most recent American Community Survey. This is a demographic breakdown of the Community Engagement Survey respondents, and I'll switch to a slide that shows some differences in a second. But I do want to highlight that for this survey, respondents were a bit less likely to respond to demographic questions, specifically race and ethnicity and income levels. So you can see on this slide that we have differences in response rates by age. We see that those over the age of 45 were more likely to participate in the community engagement survey. And also those with a college degree or more were more likely to engage, to participate in the community engagement survey. There is a difference by race, but due to the fact that about 13% of respondents did not provide their race or ethnicity information, I don't want to make any conclusions about if that's representative of the difference from who you're hearing from. The same goes for income as well. All right. And just to give you a better picture of how much more likely you might be to hear from those who responded to the community engagement survey, we have 47% of the general Tumwater public have not engaged with the city in the past year, whereas those who responded to the community engagement survey, only 16% had not engaged with the City of Tumwater in the past year. And we provided all of those ways for them to choose that they had selected with them or that they had interacted with you all, or just to provide an other way that they've gotten in touch with the city. So what we're really hearing from with the community engagement survey is people who are very tuned in and giving you feedback. All right, going into the general mood in the City of Tumwater. Sorry, I'm having some clicker issues. There we go. People really like living here. 95% of residents would say rate the quality of life in the City of Tumwater as excellent or good, with 50% saying that it's very good. And this is on par with other cities in the state of Washington, but regardless, it is a really good result, and it's also captured in the community engagement survey as well. When we look at the demographics here, we see that the positive ratings on quality of life are high across all of the demographic groups. And so there might be some wobbles in that line there, but we do not find any statistically significant differences in quality of life ratings between the demographic groups here. So overall, your population really enjoys living in the city. When we asked residents about the top issue or the most important issue that they wanted the City of Tumwater leaders to address, they noted transportation infrastructure, homelessness, and housing affordability the most, with transportation infrastructure coming in at 18% of people mentioning that. I do want to say that the way this question is asked is it is an open-ended question where people can just write in what they think. And so those are not often one thing particularly. So our team goes through, we categorize and code the responses into different groups. And that's what you're seeing on the screen. There are about 20 other categories that people noted. These were just the ones with the most responses. But you'll see throughout this presentation that Tumwater residents are concerned, and it is top of mind for them about the transportation infrastructure here. When we compare the results of the general population to the community engagement respondents, we see that transportation infrastructure is still the highest concern, but it's actually a higher concern for those who responded to the community engagement survey. And we also see that crime and public safety growth, and then also the environment are higher priorities for the community engagement respondents than the general population. Okay, getting into the meat of this, of these results, we're going to talk about government performance and resident priorities. And I do want to say, please jump in if you have any questions. Just don't worry about waiting for the end. To start off, we asked residents to rate your performance on a handful of different things, not specific services, but just how they think you're doing overall. And I do want to note that people are very positive about the ability of the city leadership to deliver services efficiently. And this is not a small feat in a time when people generally do not feel that government is efficient or are upset with that. So I think that's a really positive result. People also feel as if city leadership creates a community where they feel like they belong. And a majority of residents do feel like they are kept informed about city matters. And then we have two things that are below the 50% line, but still hovering right around half. We have focusing on priorities that matter the most to residents. You are all doing this survey and asking people what matters to them. So I think that you guys are doing what you can here to better understand that. And then finally, managing the public's money. What I want to call out here is that this has the highest percent of respondents who don't know if you're managing the public's money well. And I think that indicates not that they have a negative perception of how you're managing the money. 45% of people think you're managing it well, but people don't really know what it means or what happens to their money when it goes into the black box of they pay their taxes and then now what? So I think if you want to improve that number specifically, it's really going to be about education and just being clear about what's happening, but that's always going to be something that people are confused about. So, okay. So this, oh no, one of the labels got moved. So this graph, I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about. For this section of the survey, we provided respondents with a list of services that the city currently provides, and we wanted to rank them both on the priority that they feel those services should have, and then also their satisfaction with the current delivery of those services. And what we did then was we have categorized them based on the average priority level and satisfaction level, and we've put them into 4 different groups. So that strengths box in the upper right-hand corner, which the availability of high quality drinking water, I don't know what happened to that label. It is in that top right box. Those are going to be high priority areas that people have high satisfaction with. So people are very satisfied with their availability of high quality drinking water, and they are also satisfied with the public safety services that they have received, both in police and fire and emergency services. In the lower right-hand corner, we see low priority strengths, so things that people are very satisfied with, but consider lower priority services. In the left-hand corner, lower left-hand corner, we see low priority areas of improvement. So that's going to be things that people are less satisfied with than average, but do not consider them to be high priority services. And then the top left is going to be priority areas to improve. And so these are services that they consider to be high priority, and they are not as satisfied as they are with the others. In the full report, you can see that 3 and 5 respondents are satisfied with all of the city services that are being provided. minus maybe one, which I think is responding to homelessness. But overall, there's high satisfaction among these, but because we've averaged it, we can separate them out. So we see that responding to homelessness, managing street construction and maintenance, and then also managing growth and development are the areas where people feel are very important for the city to be providing those services, and also where satisfaction is a bit lower. Street construction and maintenance is, again, people are worried about transportation, and this indicates that they're not only do they think it's important, this they're not satisfied with where it is at in Tumwater. And then for responding to homelessness, this was also one of their top issues that they wanted the city to address. And so it's not surprising that it's also coming up here. And then managing growth and development, people that also can tie in with infrastructure, transportation infrastructure and things like that. So I think it's on people's mind as the city of Tumwater continues to grow. When we look at the community engagement results, we see that things shift from the general public. Managing growth and development moves from kind of barely in the priority areas to improve to firmly in the center of that box. And street construction and maintenance moves into barely strengths, but kind of just sits in the middle with people think it's average priority. People are average satisfaction with it. And then responding to homelessness moves down almost into that borderline of low priority areas to improve. So people aren't satisfied with it, but for this group of people, it is less of an urgent priority. Okay. Moving on to public safety, which we already know has a lot of positive sentiment around based off of that section. Nearly all residents feel confident in the city of Tumwater's fire and emergency medical services. So 94% overall feel confident. Almost 60% feel very confident about it. And that is also reflected in the community engagement survey. We asked people if they had interacted with fire and EMS in the last year, and about less than 1 in 5 had, and they all are rated their interaction with fire and EMS very positively. I do want to highlight, though, that for here we have only a sample of 51 people, so demographic analysis is not a good idea here, but if you are curious about who specifically said those things, that is available in your crosstabs. And then we asked residents if they feel safe in the city of Tumwater, and 92% of people feel safe here, with almost half saying that they feel very safe in the city. We do see the numbers very slightly fall in the community engagement, but it's negligible and not necessarily statistically significant. So again, continues to be across the board, people feel safe here. And then when we look at the demographic differences here, again, we see that this feeling of safety is high across all of the demographic groups, and there are no statistically significant differences between any of these ratings. So just across the board, people feel safe in Tumwater. We did ask people what exactly contributes to them feeling safe in the city, and the most common response was police presence and low response times across both surveys, with about a third of people mentioning police presence and response times. Low crime rates and also a strong sense of community were other top mentioned reasons why people felt safe in Tumwater. Again, this was a question that was open-ended, and we coded and categorized the responses. So that is what is reflected here. We also asked residents if they had interacted with the police department in the past year, and over a quarter of residents indicated that they had. And again, we see that the majority of those who interacted with the police department said that they had somewhat or very good, the quality of their interaction was somewhat or very good. And again, this is a very small sample size, N of 84, a bit larger than the number of people who had interacted with fire and EMS. But again, not a large enough sample to do meaningful demographic analysis, but it is available in your crosstabs. Okay, moving on to homelessness. As I've mentioned before, homelessness is a top issue for residents. We've asked about it, or we asked about it, or it came up in many different ways throughout the survey. So when we asked open-ended, is this what your top priority is? Homelessness comes up as a top priority, uh, as a top issue. People consider it to be 63% of people consider responding to homelessness as a city service to be a top priority or an urgent or high priority. And then we see that satisfaction with the city's response to homelessness is at 48%. So still that's not very, I think that is the lowest satisfaction rate with a city service, but again, you're still hovering around 50%. Um, but it continues to be something that residents bring up and is top of mind for them. Uh, Community engagement respondents were more divided on homelessness response, but we see here that it's really more due to their uncertainty with their satisfaction with homelessness response rather than increased dissatisfaction. So 24% of community engagement respondents don't know how satisfied they are with homelessness response. And I think this comes down to residents aren't entirely sure what the city is doing when it comes to homelessness response. I think it isn't reflective. I think it's reflective of the amount of homelessness that is in Tumwater that they actually see, and then also they don't know what the city is actually responsible for or what the city is not. They just know what they see when they drive around. We then asked asked residents what they thought, how they thought homelessness had changed over the past 2 years. And so community engagement respondents are more likely to think that homelessness has gotten worse over the last 2 years, while 61% of the general population of Tumwater feel that homelessness has stayed about the same. Okay, for these last few slides, I'm going to touch on community growth and environmental perceptions. We go into both of these topics more in depth in the full report, and there are other topics, but I want to be mindful of time. So we see that half of residents are satisfied with Tumwater's growth rate. So they think it's just about right. Or a little less than a third feel like it's too fast, and then 14% do not think it is growing fast enough. These numbers stay relatively the same with community engagement respondents. However, 39% say that of community engagement respondents feel that Tumwater is growing too fast. And then we also asked residents what they think Tumwater's largest priority should be when managing its growth, and residents are divided on what would be the best or the most important thing for the city to do. However, we do see that 29%, or the most selected category, is that ensuring roadways and the transportation system can handle more people. So again, people are worried about the transportation infrastructure. And when they think about more people being here, they are even more worried about what the transportation infrastructure can handle. But then we also see, yes.
Councilmember Gabi.
Thank you, Mayor. So you hit at a very important topic. So on the one hand, they're worried about growth, growing too fast. On the other hand, they're worried about lack of transportation. So how do you put those together? Because when you're growing, you're going to need transportation. When you don't want to go too fast, you're not having facilities for transportation. So how do we square that?
If I'm understanding you correctly, I think people aren't saying that they think Tumwater's growing too fast because the transportation system can't handle the growth. For the most part, people think that it's growing at a good rate, but when they think about how the city should be trying to handle continued growth of Tumwater, they want to make sure that the city is paying attention to the fact that the transportation infrastructure needs to be able to handle that growth as it happens, and not saying that, oh, it's growing too fast because it can't handle it. Maybe some people feel that way, but overall, they want that to be top of mind for the city as it continues to grow.
I I believe it's 31% that said the city was growing too fast.
Yes, 31% said it was growing too fast.
Okay, and then the lack of transportation or transportation not inadequate, that's what, 39%, 29% or thereabout?
Yes, and they want roads and transportations, make sure the transportation system can handle the growth, 29%.
So if I am a city planner, I think we have an issue on how to square that. I think we ought to have our city planning director put a plug on that at some point in time to see what we need to do to accommodate adequate transportation, because I know we do have that issue within the county itself, and there's just no two ways to handle that without. It is good at distributing everything, so I don't know how we square that.
I think, Councilmember Agati, you're right. You're identifying the tension that we see every day between how we manage the growth and development that's happening in our community, and ensuring that we are both accommodating the growth appropriately, and then also in an attempt to address the concerns of those who think we're growing too quickly, how we try to manage and address those concerns at the same time. You're right. They don't always, they're not, they seem directly oppositional. I would agree with that. But I think that's inherent in what we do every day at local government in terms of trying to balance the concerns and needs. And I think what Kara's pointing out here is that there are 31% of the people that were surveyed that are concerned that we're growing too fast. But if you then ask people the next question, what should we do to manage that growth that's happening, regardless of whether you think it's too fast or not, the highest number of people are most concerned that in managing growth, you're looking at the transportation system. So I think that's how I look at this. And yes, it is always challenging to do the balancing act at the local government level regarding growth and how you manage it.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Lisa. All right. And then when we compare the results for how to best manage that growth, or, whoa, no, we're not doing that. Sorry. Moving on to our final question, when we asked people about their top priority when it came to conservation and the protection of the environment, we saw that for the general population of Tumwater, their top priority was construction permitting that will protect the environment and human health, with 28% of people selecting that option as their top priority. And then I do want to highlight that we have an option here that, as we're talking about transportation infrastructure and we're thinking a lot about the environment, I think EVs and EV infrastructure often goes hand in hand with that. And what I was surprised about here was that electric vehicle infrastructure and commute reduction options were not a top priority for people regarding the environment. And so I think that sits in a bit of contrast with all of the transportation infrastructure qualms and worries that were brought up throughout the rest of the survey. The EV infrastructure is not top of mind when it comes to environmental concerns for either the community engagement or the general Tumwater residents. And then for the community engagement respondents, they are actually would place a higher priority on conserving habitat for nature lovers, plants, and animals, and then compared to the construction permitting option of the Tumwater residents at large.
I see Councilmember Kathy's hand up in Zoom. Go ahead, Councilmember Kathy.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. This is very interesting, and I appreciate you're going over it slowly enough that we can, kind of think about it for a few minutes. I think the greatest tension here, I thought about it in the previous slide about transportation and growth, is the tension between the environment and the environmental things and what people want. Because that environmental piece has shown up in some of your other slides also earlier on. And I think that's one of our big tensions. And it's consistently so. So I think how we balance in a climate crisis, our environment has a lot to do with how we handle our transportation, or how just overall, I think those two things of growth and the environment have always been, kind of neck and neck in concern. And I'd like to keep highlighting that the conserving of habitat is at a critical point, as well as roads and transportation. And speaking about roads and transportation, those were two different things there. One talked about the roads, which is our responsibility as a city. And then as far as transportation is concerned, I believe they're talking about bus service, things that we need to coordinate or collaborate or something like that. I don't know, but I'm wanting to say that I think this survey is good. You've covered a lot of things. I've learned more from this one than some of the many others that I've seen. So thanks for your work. And there's no one here surprised that I want to keep conserving the habitat, a high priority. And I also want to see us grow in a good way. So thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a really good call out, that this slide kind of brings everything together at the end of this presentation, that the core tensions that are happening here are transportation and then also the management of growth. It comes into both of those top two issues that people have, or priorities people have with the environment, is how your construction permitting is happening and then just general nature conservation in the city. And that all of those are at odds. And you have a very important job ahead of you to try and chart a path forward where you hold all of those things in the air at once.
Councilmember Jefferson, did you have a question? Okay, I see a hand up. I wasn't. Oh, all right. Thank you. Go ahead.
And that is the conclusion of my presentation.
Oh, great. All right. Any other questions or comments? I really appreciate your time, and I think this will be very beneficial for council and in the future. And so, Administrator Parks, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what Kara said earlier. We wanted to keep your packet not super large, and the crosstabs are, I find them a little bit complicated to look at, but they are available if you're interested in seeing that detail in terms of the response and how they complied with, or how they were compiled, and the results based on some of the demographic breakdowns that were made.
Just a quick comment. I see some low hanging fruit as far as some opportunities, like you had talked about going out as you were going out, that as far as just as far as engaging with our community, just some low, just like our budgeting thing, just like by the numbers, because we are a very fiscally responsible city, and unlike, and we should be noting that we really do, we do a very good job of managing our money, and just something just succinct, and for people that don't realize that, no, we do a good job of that, and just something real easy, and just something by the numbers or something, just things like that I think we have an opportunity, just little bullet things that just because you're so good about things like on Facebook or just some of the things,
Yeah.
just looking at the way people interact with us, just like, did you know, and
Yeah.
just sharing those kinds of facts with people. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree, Councilmember Swarthout, the low hanging fruit are those areas where you saw the don't know responses. And that's really around financing and what it is that we are doing for homelessness, those types of things. Jason and I and Troy and I have already talked a lot just in the last couple of weeks about how we can implement different types of programs. I asked Jason to kind of take a look at it and how do we take basic municipal finance 101, not the 201 that you all got, but the 101, and take it to people. Asking people to come to City Hall is a great idea. Posting on social media helps, but actually, can we develop some sort of a process where we're actively and proactively going out to the community? Maybe we're going out to HOAs, or maybe we're going out to, a Kiwanis Club, or we're actually taking basic information about where do your taxes go? What does it mean to have a general fund? What are the sources of revenue? All that information that's a big, huge mystery to a lot of people, and be able to take that to people as opposed to necessarily just always asking them to come to us for information. So definitely low hanging fruit and small wins, right? In the grand scheme of things, in terms of then turning around and trying to deal with all of the really complicated things that we have to deal with every day, like balancing growth and development with protection of the environment. So for sure, very appreciative of the work DHM has done to help us really focus on areas where we can have some positive impacts.
All right. I see Councilmember Jefferson's hand is up now.
Yes, is the total number of people who answered a good amount? And for a city our size, what's an average?
Sorry, could you say that one more time? I cut
Yes,
out.
is the total number of people who responded to the survey a good amount? And what would be the average for a city our size?
Oh, for the number of people who responded,
Yes,
we were worried about being able to get over 200 people to respond to this survey for the statistically valid survey based on the population size, and we were able to get 300. So we were very pleased with the turnout, and it was enough for a statistically valid survey.
all right, excellent. So Tumwater came through.
Very engaged city, yes.
Councilmember Kathy.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to say one other thing that excited me when the people called out, and it was gleefully reported, sort of. I thought you got excited about the fact that people talked about our water. And I think that's a great thing, because this is, I'm serving on the Orca board. We're an air agency, but it's kind of a whole environmental thing. And there are so many places struggling with water, having enough water and having clean water and good water and all of that. And we have a great water department, and our people there have done a really, really good job for the environment and for our drinking water. And I'm glad people talk about that often, and I'm glad that was captured in the survey. So thanks for either the way you put out questions or wrote them or asked people questions, because that's down in the river kind of stuff. So thank you for that.
May I have a question?
Councilmember Gabi.
So your 5.7 error rate, can you say on top of your head, in comparison to your previous survey of sample size of Tumwater, is that what you normally would look at, or you've seen in the past, 5.7 error rate?
So the 5.7 error rate is based off of the sample size that we have in comparison to the population. So it would be the same if we were to have more people, it would be a lower error rate. And then any surveys that had less people who answered it, it would be a much higher rate.
Okay, so if you have 5.7, your confidence interval will be what, 94.1, 94.3%?
Sorry, one more time.
Your confidence interval will be 94.3%?
95% confidence.
95, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Great. Any other questions or comments? All right, I think this is going to be very valuable information for us in the future, and I really appreciate all this work and that the fact that we will be able to, if anyone wants to dig into deeper on any specific topic, they will be able to have access to do that. That is really great.
Yes.
So just for council and the public, this is just a presentation, so there's no action to be taken on this agenda item.
Thank you
very
all.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.